Wow, you guys. So I made a video yesterday and mentioned that I had been fighting a cold that got really rigorous through the day, and I think I think I'm fighting it, and I think I'm winning because I feel a lot better today. And what I did was I mostly just tried to sleep it off. I um I dressed extra warm because I felt really chilly as well, so I dressed extra warm and got under all my blankets and I just slept as much as I could. And believe it or not, I almost feel like it's gone. So we'll see how it goes because I'm going to go into work today and I can't afford to be getting the sniffles because I'll be bending over ice cream, right? So I need to be in good shape. Anyways, I wanted to take time today to talk about my martial arts upbringing and that I kind of think that I've been learning martial arts in a backwards way by starting with I say more of the modern tradition of Taekwondo. So I say that because it's like a martial art. It takes after traditional martial arts in the way that we wear the costume with the belt and everything. But they're saying they developed Taekwondo specifically for military use in South Korea. And so what it is, it's like trying to make it a simple way for people to find power in their strikes. So you just want to what you call get from point A to point B. So hopefully Taekwondo teaches you just to be direct, just get her done. So the other martial arts seem to use more elaborate movements. So I'm going to give an example of what I mean. For example, you may either be in horse stance or front stance. I'm going to talk about Taekwondo's version of a front stance because if you've been in many martial arts, a lot of times you're kind of standing at an angle with your back foot out this way and one foot forward. But they taught us, we're just going to stay straight forward. Our feet are about shoulder width here, kind of like I'm walking down two lines that are parallel. As I'm going to step forward to my front stance. So you can't see my feet. I'm just going to tell you now that both my feet are facing the same way. Front leg is bent, but the back leg is straight. And so for our drill, we're going to use, this is actually from Long Fist. So anytime you see the punches where it comes all the way to the hip or the side, it's called Long Fist. So this is mostly done for training and conditioning, but often in every art, even karate, taekwondo or karate are going to tell you need to hold your guard up and fight from here. Rather, although our katas and our drilling is from here. So the funny thing about taekwondo is they're teaching us to punch like this. So first of all, regardless of how our hand is formed, what I'm talking about is more the how we're pulling back, and we're not turning our hip or shoulders at all. We're just going to keep them steady, but it comes from the floor, it comes through your hip and shoulder, but it's not that noticeable. So my punch should be without turning my hip and shoulder. Now, if we go backwards a little bit more, so after doing Taekwondo, I went on to the Kempo Wushu system. So that's also a relatively newer tradition as well. And in that case, that martial art is being developed for the street. And so we want to consolidate. So they were, instead of just trying to simplify, but consolidate some of the best stuff from every martial art they could get their hand on. And so for those people, that would include like Kung Fu, Taekwondo, and Karate. And so some Kempo systems way heavier on Karate and some Kempo systems way heavier on Kung Fu. But if that concept was still around and included everything in the world, it would just be everything in the world. But for those people, that's where they're getting their martial information. So I spent some time in a system that is from the Parker system, and then the next one down is the Tracy. So similarly, they teach us a fighting stance where you step out into a horse stance where if there was a line down the floor, my big toe is on that line and my heel is on my back foot is on that line. So it's like kind of like being in a horse stance, but then facing sideways this way towards your opponent. And this idea, and then when we turn and punch, for example, we might have the front foot forward, but the back leg is allowed to turn a little bit. So we are suggesting going from your hips being at a 45-degree angle to being straight ahead. So on this punch, I would probably want my hip this way, and then I'm going to pivot and straighten out my back leg. as I throw this punch. So I'm allowed to move my hips and shoulders this much, whereas in Taekwondo, I would have just kept it all just right here, right? And so then we go on to Shaolin Kung Fu. That's my next major style. And so we have a similar, the front stance is a little bit different in every system, right? So this system, they have a step straight out from the heel. So your back heel, and front toe are on the same line. And as we punch, we're also going to turn that back heel out just like on Kempo does. Bring our hips all the way forward. But then when we throw that forward hand, we're going to turn to a 45 degree angle. So our hip and shoulder helps to launch that front punch, see? And so those pull backhand coming back here, see? So all three systems do it this way. And then I went to karate. I visited a couple places that use karate or do karate, and like, so similarly, I think the Shotokan karate had the same stance as Kung Fu, but I was taking traditional Kung Fu, so that's kind of where they are related. They both have that long, it looks like yoga warrior pose with punches being added. So my little joke has been that this is actually yoga boxing, because we're using practically a yoga posture during our training, right? So anyways, so this is the majority of my Asian training. I like to consider this all to be pretty much Shaolin based training, because I ended up kind of going backwards by being in Taekwondo and Kempo was kind of seeing the modern tradition, but I think by going from there to the Chinese Shaolin Center, that's where I started going backwards in time and finding out where this is coming from. And so when I went to this Kung Fu school I found in Denver, I could tell, this is like much cruder looking than I expected. So this isn't like your modern day wushu. This is like the root of it, so I was wanting to get to the root of it, and I found it. And so, so we're going back to like, we're studying an art that goes back for not thousands, but like at least hundreds of years. So it happened, like they're thinking around 600 AD is when they started Shaolin, for example. Of course, martial arts has been around the world all these years because, we're a predator animal. So we fight to survive. We have to go out and kill something and eat it, and fight with the other people for territory. So the need to fight has always been there, and probably it had to get to a point where we become a more intellectual animal to create a martial art. And so at the root of all of our art is mostly wrestling, so we've always taken rocks and thrown them at each other. We've always taken sticks and spears and things, but I think what's happening is we're finding that more and more all the time. And so what's happening with these more modernistic martial arts, like so things like Aikido and Tai Chi get ripped on a lot because they don't really work. And so my defense for those arts is that, if you can find a legitimate person who makes those work, those are people who put in decades of training. And to get that good, they've had to train in multiple areas, including wrestling, grappling, and striking. So, and it doesn't happen overnight. So that's why you can't just go and learn Tai Chi or just go and learn Aikido. It's almost like you're skipping all the levels that come before that. And so in ways, like going into things like Taekwondo and Kung Fu and things like that, I feel like there's a similar problem where I feel like these are products of mastery. They exist by people training for so long. And like Kung Fu itself, again, seems to be missing some of the training that you need to make it work better. And that's really just the fundamental wrestling and grappling that goes with it. And so I feel like nowadays a lot of training is leaving that out. So like if you're doing Taekwondo, it's the art of hands and fists. So we want to be good at if we could just kick and punch really good and take them down, because if you're dealing with multiple opponents, you don't have time to grapple. That's why we need to be a good striker. But at the same time, if we don't practice the grappling, we're missing out on some of the core training we need to make our striking actually more effective. And so now that I've moved to Montana, I ended up going to a place that teaches the basic components of mixed martial arts, which is jiu-jitsu and judo and kickboxing. So it started to make me see, I feel like it's helping my Kung Fu work better. Like I feel like I understand my Tai Chi better now that I've seen some actual, grappling and takedowns and stuff from this other system. So that's where, you don't want to have a mindset that you should only do this or just do this. Like you really need to see all of them. So I feel like that's my personal evolution. Is starting out with Taekwondo, which kind of gets ripped on a lot because it's become more of a sport art over here, and a lot of people who do Taekwondo aren't learning really great fighting skills. And so, but I don't want to say that you don't get anything valuable from it. I feel that there are a lot of things that I get from Taekwondo that I value today, you know, so simple stuff like they teach us, like when we're throwing punches, you need to understand the equation mass times acceleration equals force. So you learn some basic physics right there, right? So the mass is how much weight is in my punch. If I'm just throwing my arm, and I put my body into it, and the acceleration is as I'm punching, I should be accelerating, especially at the end when I whip and snap it like that. And then that's all gonna add up to how much force I'm creating. So we get a little bit of science there. What are some of the components? You need stance, focus, action hand, and reaction hand. So your reaction hand is that pullback hand. Okay, so that's why we practice this type of punching. So we learn how to make the whole body work coordinated. And then when we shorten it down to practical application, the pullback hand should just be up here, countering this way as I'm punching out. I'm just kind of bringing it back. So anyway, so I kind of think it's, when I start making videos to teach out some of my knowledge, I kind of want you to understand that my first training is Shaolin Biz training, but now I'm trying to work in what I'm getting out of I kind of see MMA as being like the most modern thing, because what we're doing now is we're kind of, I think it's a lot like Kempo is meant to be, you know, like just trying to take the best, what makes everything work the best. And that's why it's fun looking at what they're teaching to the MMA fighters as far as the kickboxing and stuff. So they're picking up on a lot of the Muay Thai because it's pretty good stuff, and it seems to also help create a crossover for somebody who's been learning grappling, how to combine your grappling and your striking and stuff like that. And then, so before I left Denver, I met a guy that teaches a system that's a combination of Kun Tao and Silat. And so what Kun Tao is when the Chinese came to Indonesia, and they had to make their kung fu adapt to the Silat. And then the Silat is what the Indonesians had. And so they're all part of the Vedic systems, like so kung fu, karate, Muay Thai, and Silat have all had that Vedic influence. They're all just a little bit different in their outcomes, you know. So that's where training with him, he really helped me to put together the striking and grappling, how to combine it all, and that how to bring things to a good finish, you know. And so again, somebody who's helped me to see the bigger picture. Now he was also kind of drawn off of a lot of other things. So when I come to his house and we train there, sometimes he's like, today we're going to work on something I got from karate, and today we're going to work on something I got from boxing, or today we're going to work on something we got from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and tie that all in, you know. And so that's actually who taught me my first boxing. Like, so he taught me more the traditional, where you're standing out here like this, see. So now modern times they're trying to teach us more like Mike Tyson style, peekaboo. So so these are going to be some of my influences, and then when I talk about combinations and how we're getting power and stuff, like I tend to fall back on Xingyi terminology. And so what Xingyi is the use of the 5 elements, or the 5 energies. So it's like the alchemy of Shaolin. So Shaolin is mostly Vedic, but part of it is Taoist. And so the Taoism is when we get into just understanding like yin and yang, for example, like duality. That is played out more with Bakwa. So in Bakwa we like to talk about those trigrams or those hexagrams, and there's like 8 trigrams and there's like 64 hexagrams. So we're talking about duality. But when we go into the 5 element energy, instead of duality, we're just talking about the different ways energy works. So I'm going to go over some of the 5 Xingyi elements, and different things I picked up along the way, like the breathing meditation, because what you need to be good at your martial art is basic stuff like your posture, finding good posture, and some of the stuff we learn to be good at martial arts actually carries over to everyday life. So for example, once you start to learn good posture and functional movement, then you just start to use that all the time. So even if you never had to beat anybody up with your kung fu, you've defeated nature, you know, because nature's breaking us, and you're like that bubble being popped by nature. Again, you need to learn good posture and breathing, because that's kind of how we, you know, we keep ourselves well through that. And so when we go into martial arts, it's going to help us a lot, knowing posture and putting awareness into the body. But if you just do that anyways, then you're not going to go through the house smashing your toes on things anymore, and bumping into people, and dropping things. And so good kung fu will teach you. We have a saying, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So when you practice kung fu, it teaches you how to do everything else. So like I hardly ever get to fight with people. Most of my fighting is by going to sparring and things like that. And then most of my kung fu happens every day when I lift things. So you want to take a good weightlifting class. You want to, if you can, try to take a good yoga class. And all this stuff is gonna, like, so you'll know you have a good teacher, because truth is truth all across the board. So your weightlifter teacher, your yoga teacher, your kung fu teacher, are all gonna teach you the same thing about proper posture. And so I want to make special videos about this too. So I like to go over some stuff that has to do with martial arts, and some stuff that well, you do to be a better martial artist, but it's not really even martial arts, right? That's the irony there. So I have a lot of fun ideas to share about martial arts, even though I'm not always the best example. I'm not a master. You know, I probably don't even deserve my black belt. But that's besides the point. So anyways, I've gone from Taekwondo, where they're teaching us this kind of, and now I've been working in boxing, where they're teaching us this kind of being able to keep both your legs bent, so we don't have that straight back leg anymore. And where we're throwing those punches, it's this longer movement. So I'm turning my whole hip and shoulders to throw a nice lead hand strike, and then I'm going to turn my whole hips and shoulders back the other way to let the other hand out. So stuff like that. So it's fun to break it down, and I'm going to show you, like, so the question is, which one's better and which one's right? And the answer is yes, which one is right? Both are right. And so here's the backwards evolution, is that so in Xingyi we talk about wood, for example. We're stepping and we're not turning the hip, we're not turning the body, and I feel like this is that similarity in Taekwondo. We're stepping on and throwing these punches. We're keeping all this straight because we're getting the wave through our body, right? So it's, I guess that's where we're talking about when you're starting out in Taekwondo and you're learning how to punch without turning the body. You're skipping right on to a higher level method of striking. Where when you go into boxing and they are teaching you how to move your shoulders and your hips, or into Kempo and other older styles, this is where you're going to get raw power. This is where you're going to get more power in your punches by knowing how to turn the body. But that's the early way you learn it, right? So that's how you start out. So you need a way that is going to be a good guarantee that when I throw these punches, there's going to be power. And then later, when I become a higher level martial artist, then I should be able to. So these little karate punches and Taekwondo punches are good for what they are. So, you know, you want to rely on those good boxing punches if you want a nice knockout punch and a guarantee you. But these other kind of punches, like these karate punches, if I'm just throwing a jab from here to here without turning my shoulder, for example, that's a great way to flurry in on somebody. Like, it's very sneaky, and bam, it's like it's in there. I don't need a lot of power. I'm just trying to hit them and make them react. Those can hurt too. So I can use those Taekwondo punches a little bit and then set up for a good boxing punch. So the way I see it is, hey, it's just more vocabulary for me. But now I have a way to put it in perspective because I'm seeing other things, right? And so anyways, and not only that, but then if we start looking at how, you know, if you've been missing out on wrestling and grappling, that's a great way to set up for striking. So if you take a good Kung Fu class, I think the one I went to, it's almost like being in a judo class where you're allowed to hit, because we want to take our opponents down, right? So we're looking for ways to get in on them, take them down, and so we use strikes to set those up. So sometimes we use grappling to set up a strike. So we might get somebody who's extending, we might take them off balance and have them going like this, right? So getting them in almost like getting them in an arm bar, just long enough to pull them off balance, and that way you can just go right ahead and kick on through. or vice versa. I might come in and throw some punches so that way I can step in and then judo throw. So anyways, that's a little bit about my training. So when I come back to do another video, I think just for fun, I want to try to like keep my thoughts in order. So I got that Taekwondo, I got that Shaolin-based background. So we're going to talk about karate punches versus boxing punches sometimes. But they kind of go together for me. So other people, if you're a new martial artist, you want to pick one thing and stick to it. You don't want to do too many at one time for that reason. Because like, if you go from like boxing to Taekwondo to Kung Fu, for example, you don't want to take all three at one time. You just go to one of those for a while. But then do something like Judo at the same time. That's like another subject area. That way it doesn't interfere with your boxing, right? So I personally think if you want to be a great fighter, you should be learning boxing first. And then later on, see other things. And then also if you want to be a gentle fighter, Jiu-Jitsu can be very rough. But it teaches you ways to fight without striking, and it teaches you ways to end a fight as peacefully as possible too. So it helps add the softest extreme. So you have the hardest extreme is probably, knocking somebody out, I think, of course, killing somebody is the hardest extreme, but short of that would just be knocking them unconscious, right? So let's talk about from knocking someone unconscious to just stopping them from fighting. Striking is great for if you have multiple opponents. If you have a great strike, maybe you can knock them unconscious or disable them by taking out the legs, things like this. And then grappling is better in a one-on-one situation. Maybe you just have somebody that's under the influence and we need to get them to stop fighting because they're just going wild. Like, like there's like videos like somebody's going wild at the gas station and there's a jiu-jitsu black belt there that's able to basically bring him under arrest until the police department can get there. So that's kind of like, he's lucky it was that, not being hit in the head and running a chance of getting brain damage or hitting the ground hard, So that way you can help assist the police department in arresting somebody that needs to go and detox, perhaps, whatever. So anyways, so I like to talk about martial arts for someone like myself. I don't work, I'm never going to go into law enforcement or the military. But I do like to go out late at night, and when I was living in Denver, I like to go to the clubs and go to concerts, and and if you're somebody that's going to be out after dark and in places like that, you may need to know a little bit about self-defense, at least on a psychological level, and how to avoid ending up in a physical altercation. But if you do end up in a situation, by being out late at night, and that's where most of my stories are, like me being a cab driver or going out to concerts, and so that's right where most of my adult, if I've had any sort of altercation, those are the places where they've happened. So then, if you're going to go into those places, you need to face the reality that you may need to defend yourself. So anyways, I'm not interested in hurting people, of course. I feel like if I could, I'd just make friends with everybody. Like I'm a happy dog and I just want to be petted, But if you get me on the bad side, I have to go on to self-defense and I'm like that same dog going, and there's like, uh-oh, she's crazy. Yeah, you betcha. So don't make me fight. Anyways, I'm going to teach a little bit more about my crazy Kung Fu. See, I like those elbow strikes. Get in close elbow striking. And the flurry of hands, is kind of fun. I can use that flurry of hands, but I'm also, what you see me doing here, I'm going on their arms. So when you see me doing this, diving in on their arms, rolling in onto their center, getting through their arms, So that way, you want to be like Wota. Like same thing on Jiu-Jitsu, like when you're trying to get past somebody's guard, if I'm trying to get through their hands, I'm rolling in through the gaps. Anyways, I don't want to make my videos too long or I won't be able to upload them. So I hope you guys enjoy hearing a little bit about my past and what I'm made of. And next time, I think we should talk about the 5 energies. I think that's a fun discussion. So here's my Shaolin salute to you. You guys have a fun day. I'll talk to you soon.